Hello and welcome to Mindset Kitchen. My name is Diana Paliokaite and I'm the host of the show. In my kitchen today I have Rory Underwood. Rory is best known for his international rugby career, not only scoring a record 49 tries for England, but also for winning 7 caps for the British Lions touring Australia and New Zealand. Throughout this record-breaking rugby career, Rory amassed 3,000 hours flying as a pilot in his 18 years in the Royal Air Force. In 2009, Rory founded Wingman Ltd, a strategy consultancy that utilizes his experience from his impressive career. Hello, Rory, and welcome to Mindset Kitchen.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for being here.
No, I'm looking forward to this. I can see the food starting to come out. I'm getting hungry.
Well, unbeknown to the guests of the shows who are watching, we had to change and make slight amendments to Rory's meals, which I absolutely love because you didn't want to eat something that not particularly enjoy. So thank you so much for being open and honest, and I hope this meal is going to be delicious for you. So before I cook, I want to read your first message and then I'll talk about the food that I'm going to cook. So the first message, by the way, the messages are incredible.
Thank you.
And I can see there's just so much depth behind them. So I hope we can really reveal some of that. I'm not going to put too much on the spot. So just a few questions there, I'm sure. Nothing prepared, nothing scripted. So the first message is, the only mistake you will ever make is one you never learn from. Tell me more about it.
I think it's one of those things that over the years we've all made mistakes, and sometimes we feel like we live or die, or are perceived as a good or bad thing based on that. The thing is, at the end of the day, as human beings, we've always made mistakes, and we will continue to make mistakes. And so if you take it from a negative, you worry about all the bad things going wrong. But from the point of view of, if we're always going to make mistakes, how do we avoid them, and how do we learn from it, and how can we be better? How do we adapt the way we do things, how we think about things, etc. And so from that sort of positive mindset, it's okay, it happens, what am I going to do about it? And so accept that mistakes will happen, but do something about it, and so that you can learn from it, adapt and change things. And so that's the way I sort of try to perceive it. It doesn't mean that you don't get upset, you don't, think back to, oh, I shouldn't have done that, or was that a mistake? But then it's how do you then turn that thinking around and turn it into a positive and learn from it? Because there's so many different other phrases like, form is temporary, class is permanent type scenario. So, just because you make a mistake doesn't mean necessarily that you are a bad person or you've destroyed any sort of whatever. How can you turn that and learn from it so next time you're a better person? And so it's always looking at that positive side of things, and that's always been my sort of mantra. I always describe myself as being a 90% optimist and a 10% pessimist. So I'm always optimist, but I've always got a little bit there just to prepare me for when things go wrong.
So Rory, that was great, almost an introduction to what we're going to talk about, because I usually also ask guests to tell a little bit more about yourself. But I didn't this time.
No, sorry, I do like talking.
And just straight away went in with the message. However, I think that message would probably stem from your career. Yeah. And if I may pick on that and say, what are the lessons that you learned, and what have you done to change or learn from them that would give an experience, an example?
There's a few things where you sort of tangibly learn things, but I think the majority of my learning has been from a psychological perspective and to a certain extent emotional. Obviously if you make a mistake in sport, it can have a game changing. You can lose the game, or you make a mistake and the opposition score a try. I never got quite that same situation in flying jets, because obviously if things go wrong, it can go very badly wrong. But that doesn't mean I made some mistakes, and I can give you one of these mistakes I made in the flying sense. But from my perspective, a lot of that thinking, it helps your resilience as a person. If you can understand how to take that and learn from it, that will improve your resilience. And resilience is a big factor. If you think about playing sport for such a long time that I did do, there's ups and downs, and you've got to come to terms with it. And with flying, It's 4 years for me to go through flying training.
Wow.
And it's not, there's very few that go all the way through and it's all plain sailing and they pass every flying colours. Every now and then we always have a bit of a, hiccup or have a bad trip or a bad day, because that's just life and people. But I'll give you one particular example that I went flying, and this is, I was 20, so this is 85. So it's about the summer of 85, and so it's a long time ago. Was that 40 years? Oh my God.
I was just.
So 40 years
I wasn't
ago.
born yet.
Yeah. So it's 85. So I was 22, and I'd completed my first 2 flying training courses. So I'd got my wings. I qualified as a part in the Royal Air Force. I'd probably flown about 200 hours, 220
Wow.
hours, something like that. And so we got detached down to RF Broady in a Hawk to go and do some night flying, because in the summer you're not allowed to night fly past a certain time. So we detached to another airfield down in Haverfordwest, down in West Wales. And I literally just had to go and fly solo. So that means I've been, checked out to fly night on my own in a Hawk.
Wow.
And the idea was that the first night we went down there, we went as a duel. We did a dual sortie, flew around at night, because people think at night you just look at the instruments, but you don't. You look out, because it's at night you can see the stars, you can see the lights of the towns, and you see that the roads got lights and stuff, so you can navigate looking at the ground and that sort of stuff. But obviously it's quite dark in the cockpit, etc. And so we did that sortie, landed. Next day we came in to do one more sortie, and then if he was happy, he was going to let me go solo. So we got in, and the weather was poor.
Wow.
So, and of course, it's very late at night because it's summer. So I think it was the end of August or early September. So obviously night is quite late. So we came in, the weather was poor, so we couldn't get airborne till quite late. So we eventually got airborne, did our sortie, landed, and there was a bit of a sort of a quick debrief. Every happy Rory, do this, go off and do solo, do about 30, 40 minutes, just fly around with it, but get back, and you need to land by 12 o'clock. You have to land by 12 o'clock. So
Wow.
I came back in, did the debrief, checked everything was all right, just about go and get airborne. So I'd be getting airborne at something like, 11:15 or whatever. And so eventually I went to do my sortie. I went down to the flight line to go and sign from our aircraft. And the engineers went, "Oh, sorry, sir, the aircraft's not ready yet. The fuel bozer was late, so there's no fuel. We're waiting for fuel." And so I couldn't. We talk about signing the aircraft. So when the engineers handed over to the pilots, and so I couldn't take it. So I was like, "Oh," so I was sitting there, thinking, "Oh no, I've got to get airborne because I need to get back in time for 12."
12.
So eventually, after a bit of a wait, they refueled the aircraft. They got all the gases and things, and they signed it all out, and they gave me it's a Form 7, it's like a logbook, and then I sign it, so that I'm responsible for that aircraft. And so ran out to the aircraft with my all my kit on, jumped in the aircraft, and we sped out. Anyway, long story short, I rushed through all the checks, started the engines, rushed out to the runway, lined up in the runway, got permission to take off, got airborne, and then I could relax because I couldn't get any faster now. So I flew around in the local area at night or whatever, and then just came back and we do circuits. So we'd land and take off, doing some practicing various different types of circuits at the airfield. And eventually, literally just a few seconds before midnight, I landed and I finished the sortie. But as I landed and I was tacking down the runway, what we do is we're in ejection seats. So we're in an ejection seat, so we're strapped in, 5-point harness.
Yeah, seen the movies.
Yeah, so you've seen Top Gun. And as you slow down, you get to a speed where you feel comfortable, then you want to put the pins back into the seat to make the seat safe.
Yeah.
And then once you do that, you can unstrap out of the ejection seat because you've been hot and sweaty flying around doing your stuff. So I reached up to go and find the pins to put it in my seat, and all I saw were these 2 Dayglow flaps that were sticking up. And normally you have to pull those flaps down and you push the pins in so it holds the flaps down. But the 2 Dayglows are supposed to be a warning to say they've not been put in. But of course it's night. We don't fly with big lights on in the car like you do in a car sometimes, It's all dark, so you can see the instruments, you can see night flying outside, and you get your night vision. And so I saw these 2 flaps, and it's just this icicle went straight down my spine.
Wow.
Because I knew that if they're not there, they're still in the seat. I looked down, they were still in the seat. And so I'd flown the whole sortie about 30, 40 minutes without my ejection seat being live. So it wasn't dangerous per se, but you could argue it was too safe, because if I'd had an emergency and had to pull the ejection seat handle, it wouldn't have
Yeah.
Why is it not going? I'd have to take the pin out, but I have time to do it or not. So, at the subsequent Board of Inquiry, Mrs. Underwood would have gone, why is my son, not eject out of the aircraft? And that was G-Man. Basically, there are 2 checks you do when you get into the aircraft, start up and go off, to check that the ejection seat is live. Because if the engine blows up or whatever, you can eject out of the aircraft on the ground. So you make sure it's out then. And as you're taxiing out before you get airborne, you check it again then.
And
so 2 checks.
Check?
I obviously missed it. I just talked through it and rushed, yeah. And so obviously I was taxiing going, oh my God, I can't, I don't understand. Why, how did I miss it? And I was beating myself up. And I got into the aircraft, back into the squadron, went up to see my instructor, and he was like, how did that go? I said, fine, sir, no problem. Yeah, all hunky-dory, no problems. And I told nobody about it. And, lots of situations where you make mistakes, where you know you made a mistake, but it doesn't necessarily present itself. So I made a mistake, but nothing happened. It didn't cause a problem, it didn't break anything, didn't crash, didn't do anything like that, but I knew I made a mistake. And I told nobody about it. And then subsequently later, in the 90s, I was responsible for introducing human factors training into the Royal Air Force. And I used to run a 2-day program about this. And half the whole thing was the context of how we as humans make mistakes and how do we learn from it. And so there's techniques we do we're training people to facilitate these sort of actions and to make learning easier. And so I basically went, what's a perfect example? Here's a perfect example to use as a case study to get people to talk about, okay, at which point did that accident happen? Because we always talk about a chain link of events.
Yeah.
And the way we do things is that we're constantly breaking the chain, but every now and then, sometimes the chain doesn't get broken, and then sometimes something bad can happen. And I remember, but for me personally, as I was taxiing, I was going, I can't believe I'm right, okay. Never again will that happen. So when I line up on the runway, before I get airborne, before I put the power on and get airborne, I will always say to myself, have I got, permission to take off, and have I got my pins out? So it's like last chance checks. So I said to myself, every time you get airborne, have last, and I did. I continued using it. But we always have this famous saying in the Royal Air Force: "I'll never do that again until the next time."
Until the next time, yeah.
So that's one of the challenges you have. But there's a real learning for me as a very young pilot. 200 hours, 250 hours of my 3,000, and that's when I made a mistake, and it really focused to,
Wow. It's must have been quite scary as well, because you were so young as well, and you started your career and you got this position and you want to impress. So it's a mistake, obviously. Now you're sharing with everyone, and it, as you said, it served you right. But I think I completely agree with you. When I launched Mindset Kitchen, I was talking to my partner. I said, can just all mistakes happen right away, please? I want maybe the first 3-4 episodes, because these people know that I'm not really experienced yet. So I need everything to happen now, because the more I do, I want to get better and better and better. And the mistakes were happening, and they sometimes still happen. Or for example, I should have maybe followed up with you again on different types of food. For example, I don't normally do it. I could have, right? So little things like that, you keep on learning. But I don't think mistakes will ever stop. Yeah. And we're never going to prevent them, unfortunately. But fortunately, mistakes is what makes us better. And
if
you learn from them.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I'm trying to make from that statement. If you don't learn from it, then you'll constantly make mistakes. If you do learn from it, it's a past mistake and you won't do it again 99% of the time. Then learn from it, then fine.
And and you grow stronger and more experienced, I guess. And so it's in a way, you don't want to attract mistakes and call on mistakes, but the essential part of in any company, business. Yep. And I know it's sometimes hard to come forward with mistakes we have done, because sometimes it could be embarrassing or costing money and so on. But I think certain things need to be told in order to change and move from them. So I think it's one of the greatest messages you could possibly have brought from your career. But this is the being Royal Air Force, your actual career, because I actually thought you were a rugby player as a professional career player, and then I found out that actually you had another huge career, which was flying. And in terms of rugby, you must have had so many different mistakes you have done, and
Of course you do.
probably publicly as well.
Yeah, because when you're playing a sport, it is a, combative sport, rugby
Yeah.
is. And so sometimes things go to hand, you drop balls, you miss tackles and stuff. You make mistakes all the time. And so again, if you go into a mindset where you really wallow in your own self-pity or despondency or disappointment, which to a certain extent is quite right. You shouldn't make a mistake and just think, whatever. But if you do have a sense of that, you know that there's a penalty that goes with that. But it's that element of resilience and how you get your mindset into a way of, how do I turn this into a positive? How do I turn this into a learning? How do I turn this into making me better for next time? That's for a lot of sports people and anybody in high profile situations, but to be honest with you, just anything in life, that will stand you in good stead for the rest of your life.
Indeed. Thank you so much for sharing that big mistake that thankfully you're still here.
Yes, yeah.
So it wasn't killing you or making your mum really upset.
Yes, exactly.
So Rory, whilst we've been talking here, I'm not sure if you ever tried this before, but this is often served in sushi restaurants.
Right.
And I think it started in Nobu for the first time, but it's a crispy rice, which I've just made this morning. And
Nice.
I've served sashimi salmon with mayonnaise, sriracha, a bit of soy sauce, and on top is jalapeno pepper. Please feel free to
definitely
taste.
try one of those. Thank you.
If you need a bit of more soy sauce or anything, let me know, because it depends on the preference. Now, before I read your other message, I'm going to tell everyone what I'm going to be cooking for Rory. So it's usually quite difficult for me to find, it's a difficult challenge, I would say, to find what to cook for guests, because majority of the people are quite vague, and at the same time the challenge is an enjoyable challenge, so I get to browse and search, but I also use a lot of my intuition, and I felt like I think Rory might like beef. I don't know why. So I thought I'll cook beef, and I found this brilliant recipe called Vietnamese shaken beef.
Oh, wow.
So you marinate for 24 hours in fish sauce, oyster sauce, garlic, soy sauce, loads of different seasoning in there.
Sounds brilliant.
And the idea is it's a steak, so the idea is to flash fry it, almost shaking the wok like that for a couple of minutes, so it stays nice and pink inside. Hopefully I achieved that today. And you serve on a bed of sticky rice. And I was going to serve you with different kind of salad, but I am in my head, it's thinking I'm going to serve with, because you love peppers and peas, so I'm going to slightly pan fry these red peppers, and peas will go in at the end with the beef, so they will be shaking in that lovely sauce. And
This is very nice.
Yes?
Very nice.
Good. Please enjoy. And I'll add some spring onions, and then it all will be done towards the end. And fingers crossed you enjoy. Do you cook yourself?
Yeah, we do.
Yeah?
I wouldn't say I'm chef type things, but we do cook ourselves from raw ingredients and stuff. So you said you deep fry or just fry
pan fried on
the rice?
Yeah.
So how do you do that? Do you cook the rice and then pack it together into a sort of cake and then just
Yeah, so it has to be sushi rice, because it needs to stick together.
Oh, sticky rice type thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I cooked the sushi rice yesterday, because it needs to be 24 hours at least in the fridge, setting it. So as you said, I cooled it down, I seasoned it as you would serve sushi, I flattened it down into the tray, put the cling film on and put it in the fridge. And then I took out last night, cut it up and put it back in so that it's all in that shape. And then it needs to be quite cold when you cook it so it doesn't fall apart. So straight away I pan fried this morning.
It's quite nice. It's obviously different texture and different taste because it's rice.
Yeah.
So, I've had potato ones before. The Americans do that as well, but that's very nice.
Yeah, and it's like I don't know if you use sushi rice, but it's similar to sticky rice if you use and leftover rice. People say, well, what do I do? And that's one of the best things you can do. You can also put lots of other things like egg mayo, for example. And you can add beef tartare on there with truffle, and I've seen those in the restaurant served as well. So yeah, it's a good way of using rice. Anyway, without further ado, I'm going to ask you to talk about the second message, and that is probably comes from the rugby side now.
Yep.
Don't think about the opposition. Think about yourself. Be the best you can be and let the opposition worry about you. Tell me about it.
I suppose there's a question I get asked if I go and speak at rugby clubs, or I meet people and they know who I am and ask me questions, and we chat at dinners and things. And one of the questions they tend to ask was in '95 we played against New Zealand in the semi-final of the World Cup, and one of the gentlemen on the opposite team was a guy called Jonah Lomu, who was a bit of a star at that World Cup, and he was quite a big guy, 6'4", 6'5", but he's also quite fast. And he was a forward to begin with, and he converted into a wing. He played against my brother, but he was a bit of a phenomenon. So because my brother was on the opposite wing, we get confused, so they think that I played against Jonah. But a lot of the questions is like, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with the opposition? So the mindset around, it is a 15 versus 15. It's, my position against the opposite number. There's a lot of that sort of type psyche, and I've not really done 1v1 type stuff like boxing or tennis or anything like that. It's always been team, but there is still that element of one-to-one, but it's it's in the context of within the team as well. But there is a mindset of what I'm trying to do to prepare. I just absolutely buy into the whole team ethos. I'm passionate about teams. That's my business now, is fundamentally about how do I get teams in organisations to work as effective as possible to deliver the strategy. That's just what I'm trying to do. And so there's an element of people worry about the other people. They worry about the opposition. They worry about this. And so there's an element of try and worry more about what you can control than what you cannot necessarily control but might have some influence over. And so I always felt that I tried to get myself into the right mindset before a game. And some people, there's different people get themselves psyched up for a game in different ways. Some people are shouting and kicking and banging and, knocking the door down. If you saw me half an hour before an international, I'd be probably lying on my bench underneath my coat hook, eyes closed, in the more meditative state. And it's not trying to sleep and whatever. I'm just trying to clear my mind of all the stuff that's whizzing, all that sort of stuff around your mind, to just try and focus on the next 80 minutes of playing the game. And then just focus on really concentrating what you need to get right. Because, if you get things right, then you're going to cause the opposition some problem, whichever sort of person you are.
Yeah.
Or quality of player or whatever. Because when you play international level, you're all good players, really. So so that's the mindset I've always adopted, and it's interesting because I've had certain examples. I won't make any names. I won't give names away, but I know there was a certain that one's difficult. So there was a certain situation where the New Zealanders do the haka. They do this Maori challenge they lay down before a game. Mm-hmm. And there's always a lot of discussion and debate as to whether you should, challenge it or ignore it or whatever. There's always that. And when we were playing, we didn't play the New Zealanders very often, so we didn't see it very often. And long story short, I did a tour to New Zealand, and we went to New Zealand for 2 months, and we virtually listened to the haka every day. So you get to know the words. You start recognising the words. And then in December that year, we played New Zealand at home at Twickenham, and so they lined up to do the haka, and I stood opposite. And of course, if you want to get the haka to psych you out, it's very easy to. You can just sort of think, oh my God, this is it. This is a big thing. They're challenging me, and they're all, their faces, they're pulling their tongues and they're rolling their eyes and that sort of stuff. If you allow it to control you, it will overtake your potential performance in the game. And so that was already out. That's not an issue. But they're doing it, and you respect that they're doing it, and you are, in a sense, looking at it, you're accepting their challenge. And it's been known to me, while they were doing it, I started singing it. So while they're doing it, we're not singing it, but I was mouthing the words. So I was just singing the words as they were doing it.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, a couple of days later, I ended up speaking to one of the opposition guys later on, and he made the expression that he was there doing the haka, trying to psych me out, and he could see me just sitting there mouthing the words back at him, and he said it really threw him. It absolutely threw him, which to me just emphasised the whole context of control the controllables. Control what you can control, which is don't allow that to overtake, your emotional state before a game. And treat it for what it is a challenge, done in 20 seconds, bang, over, get on with the game. And so I try and adopt that. It's very hard. We're human beings in the day. Sometimes things are emotional and very, psychologically very strong and urges us to do things. And, otherwise you'd be a robot, so to speak. But trying to do that and trying to, use emotion when it's needed and it's good to have, but not using emotion at the times when it becomes potentially a detriment. And that's the thing. It's just how do you control the controllables?
It's amazing, and you highlighted there a couple of elements that I'm really interested in. I think majority successful sportsmen use, like, trying to visualize certain aspects, so visualizing yourself perhaps succeeding, running, or how you're feeling. And you doing that on the bench, I was just visualizing that you completely forgot about your opposition, forgot about everyone. It was about you and how are you going to show up and what you're going to do to win. And I think it's one of the most successful and greatest things you can do to your mind. And so many times, I'm aware this. I do this many times. I used to do this before Mindset Kitchen. I used to be really nervous because I've never met the guest. So many times we haven't even spoken. And I want to like the person. I want the person to like me. And you worry about these things. But instead, I sit down on the sofa maybe half an hour before the guest arrives. And I visualize how I'm going to be. I'm going to open the door. I'm going to say hello. He or she is going to really be nice, and we're going to straight away hit it on. And it's always been that. I either it's just I'm lucky with really nice guests, but
well, you get the chance to choose, obviously. So yeah,
exactly. But I believe that sets me up to always perform my best, and then whatever else is happening, I can't change it. I can't control it, as you say. So it's a beautiful analogy. And then obviously you had these oppositions. People in real life have oppositions as well at work. A big meeting awaiting and you have to present. That's your position, and you worried who's in the meeting room, how senior they are, or what they're going to think about me. And it would be a very adaptable advice. And just think about yourself. Calm yourself down. You come prepared and ready. Do not worry about so many people. And you doing loads of keynotes now, speaking in front of the audience, which I assume familiar area, but not necessarily familiar in terms of speaking and talking about it. And obviously you have to do certain elements preparation.
I would elaborate on that point, what you say there, because obviously certain things with flying and stuff like that, I can't just jump, nobody can just jump into an aircraft and go and fly and then do what, low-level flying and flying at that speed, just by turning up and jumping in. Nobody can just grab a rugby ball and play around in, in whatever and just suddenly play for England or the All Blacks or whoever. The big thing about it all is training, both mentally and physically, and the point you made there around just turning up and doing it. Some people are lucky, they may have God's gift of doing whatever they want to do, but for a lot of us it's hard work, and you've got some innate ability. From a rugby player, I did have some God-given gifts, but I was able to capitalise on it, make the most of it. Flying, I had the aptitude to fly, but I'm not the world's best pilot. I recognise that, and I had to work really hard to get to the level I wanted to go to. It was a real tough 4 or 5 years of training to get to some point to be able to be qualified as a pilot, and playing rugby at the same time. So all that, and that 4 or 5 years, that's training, learning, briefing, debriefing, constantly trying to better yourself, constant improvement. That I'm suspect if you speak to a lot of either successful people and especially sports people, there's an element of that will be in there, that they're constantly trying to work out how can they improve, how can they be better, except minimum is be the same as you were before, but you do not want to go backwards. That constant drive. And a lot of that comes down to practice, training, and learning from your mistakes.
So you clearly have that growth mindset in you. And do you think this was from upbringing, maybe your parents? How do you get there? Because so many people are successful, let's say, in a certain career, in a certain sports area, and they think, oh, I'm good, so I'm not going to do anything about it. And then actually the people who were not so good they become better than the ones that they thought are good. It's one of the books that I read, Growth Mindset, from Carol Dweck. And then there are other people who good, but they continuously put in hard work and become greater and greater. And where do you think you have that mindset from?
I think a bit of it was from my parents, because obviously from a very early age, we were very sports. I grew up in Malaysia. My brother and I, Gary and myself, we were 18 months apart. We used to just play football, come back from school, and we just play football out in the garden till Mum was screaming at us to come in for tea, and play sport all the time. We were just sports mad, and so that obviously creates that competitive mindset, especially with two boys having a go at each other. Constantly, we'd have great. Obviously World Cup football matches on the garden outside, but of course you'd have your spats as well because either fouled somebody or cheated or whatever. So that's typical sibling rivalry. But I think I'm, and it's very interesting. When you talk to me about the situation earlier with regards to whether it's an individual sport or a team sport, and there is similarities, but there are also differences, and there is. And I said to you earlier on, I really enjoy being part of a team. It's not often that I sort of go, I want to be on my own, just do my own thing, and I don't care what other people say. I'm very much that way inclined. I'm not saying this is the answer for everybody, because we're all different, and that's the other thing to bear in mind. There is a difference in all the way we think about things, do things, and what motivates us, etc. So it's the trick is trying to find out, each person what really works for you. And for me, being part of the team is it. Work now. If I go into work and for whatever reason some of my staff are not in, I go into work on my own. I go, nobody's here today. Oh, okay. And so, sometimes I get a lot of work done, but also it's just I love the dynamics of having people in the office and chatting away and having a bit of banter and stuff like that. And so the same thing applies in a team. It's not all hard-edged and hard work and we're all serious and it's all competition stuff. There is the light side of being part of a team, and you create that family feel, the esprit de corps, the being as part of one, and all that sort of stuff. And all you do that with a team sport. I love that. It's what I miss the most about not playing the sport at that level anymore. So I see the England women just won the World Cup recently, and I went to watch it, and I'm watching it going, fantastic. It's brilliant to see, and I could attach a bit to it because obviously I never won the World Cup. We came second, but I'm so pleased for them and what it's done for women's sport, but also for rugby in this country as well. It's not just women's sport; it's rugby as well. It's been a great advert for it. But to see them having achieved their dreams and seeing it and seeing how they've celebrated together, not only at the match and after the match, but for the next 2-3 days. So I'm sure there's a few sore heads at the end of this week. And that to me is just synonymous, having been on tours. My first long tour was the Lions in '89. I was away for 10 weeks.
Wow.
I was away from my wife and kids.
Yeah.
Sorry, my wife before kids. So it was 10 weeks away from work. Life in the UK. It was out in Australia, and people think, Australia for 10 weeks. That's very nice. And to a certain extent, it was, yes. But it's not all. You're training every day. You're playing sport. You're getting banged around and bossed around. You're travelling every, twice a week to another venue.
Yeah.
But
intense.
It is. But there is, downtime, and you're making friends for life. Absolutely making friends for life. And so what? Why am I coming around with all this? Part of it is that individualistic that we've talked about so far about my psyche, what I'm trying to do. But sometimes for me, there is also a bit of that sense of self-discipline towards my team. And I would say that to me, that term self-discipline, because I get this a lot from people, the perception, the way they ask questions, the way they make comments about me as being an ex-military person. There's this perception as we're ex-military, so we're told what to do and we do as we're told. And that is so far from the truth. Because when I'm in my aircraft flying around, I'm in a formation.
You have to make your own decisions.
100%, I'm the captain of the aircraft, and I'm responsible for, if I've got any passengers or a navigator or something in my aircraft, and if I'm charged of formation, I'm responsible for all those other people in the formation. It's up to me to make sure that we do the mission as safely as possible, whilst obviously doing something potentially lethal. But I need to make sure we all come back safe. And for that to happen, self-discipline is so important. So, you know, the whole mantra in the military is not so much about you do as you're told. It's more about you've been trained, you've been given the skill sets, you know what you're supposed to do, you've been given a job to do, go and do it. I'm relying and trusting you to do it.
Yeah.
But if you can't, you need to A, tell somebody about it, do something about it, tell them when you're going to be able to do something about it.
Yeah.
And that's all down to self-discipline. And it's a massive part of me, you know, if I'm going to be late to a meeting, even if it's 5 minutes late, I'll tell somebody. I'll tell the host. But in business, I go into London and sometimes I'm there 5 minutes early, and it was sort of obviously an arbitrary 11 o'clock meeting, and it was sometimes didn't start till 11:30. But that's just the way business is.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes you could argue it's military time, so very, you know, strict. But that's when you're talking self-discipline and you've got to hit a target, and it's plus or minus 10 seconds. Well, you can't have a half an hour, you know, delay.
I could not agree with you more there, especially I'm the kind of person that expect everyone to be on time, and I arrive earlier than later. I've been probably I would count on my one hand the amounts of times I was late in my life. So somehow if I manage to be on time, why so many people around us do not manage to be on time? But anyway, and I agree, and I don't think this is being strict. It's also respectful, because you respect other people's time, and time is the most precious thing we have. And so if you're wasting that time, that shows lack of respect. That's how I was brought up.
Yep.
And then you remind me, I felt all the fuzzy feelings because I was in investment banking working on the floor of 200 people.
Yep.
And I loved it. And then I quit 4 years ago to set up Mindset Kitchen and do some property business. I was doing it all alone. And whilst it was fun for some time, I miss it so badly. Yeah. I miss walking in with a cup of coffee and saying hello and catching up on the weekend, and or laughing or hearing something, or just all these little things, interactions with people that make your day. I miss badly. So I'm planning to go back.
Good. All right.
I want to go back and do it all over again.
Yeah.
I loved it. So thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And I just was going to ask you, what did you start first, rugby or Royal Air Force, or it was simultaneously?
Well, obviously I started playing rugby at school, but when I left school, I was applying to the Air Force. So in the context of, I did both at the same time. So I played rugby for England from 1984 until 96. And I joined the Royal Air Force in 83, so the year before. And I left the Air Force in 2001.
Okay, and you left because you were retiring, or you were
yeah, when you sign for the Air Force, you sign up for at the time it was a permanent commission, so I could do 16 years or the age of 38, whichever. So I signed up for that, and when you get to that point, you get a pension.
I see.
And when I was getting to that point, you know, it was the sort of aircraft I was going to fly and stuff like that. I felt it was time for a career move, and I was planning to go and join the airlines because I did my commercial pilot's license.
Oh, like be pilot in the commercial.
Yeah, so being a jumbo jet pilot. But a circumstance came up and I ended up, you know, starting a business.
Yeah, everyone would have loved to be flown by Rory. So thank you so much. That was, you taking me, I always visualize things when my guests talk, and I was visualizing you doing all of those things and you sitting in the aircraft and like we see on the movies, and so many things go wrong and things start beeping, and it's pretty impressive. And I think flying those jets in general is just an impressive thing, and you don't get to meet many people who have done that. Yeah. And I wonder why actually. Is it a certain number of people ever actually go through?
Oh yeah, it is when you talk about top 2% of high performance, you know, fast jet pilots, there's not many. I think when I was, I think enough, there was about 6,000 aircrew in the Royal Air Force when I was in. So of those, there's obviously the percentage drops down as to being fast jet pilots. So yeah, it's not. And of course now it's even smaller because the military have all, you know, reduced in size and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, you are, and that's the reason why they talk about you're the best of the best. You know, when you talk about, and I wasn't the best of the best. I was the best of a lot of, you know, of us as a population. But then you've got all the single seat pilots, you know, the Harrier pilots and the Jaguar pilots, etc. from my generation who were really good pilots. And there's all different elements of what makes a good pilot. Yeah. Not just the physical skill.
Do you fly now?
I don't fly now. No, it's you know, my office when I was flying was 250 feet and 420 knots. So it's like 450 miles an hour.
Wow.
So if any youngsters, then it's 80 meters.
80 meters.
I tell people, because visually sometimes people find that very difficult,
Yes.
but if you take a rugby pitch and you put it on end,
Okay, yeah.
we would fly underneath the top posts.
Wow.
That gives you an idea of how low it is.
Yes.
And you're doing that through the valleys in Wales or Scotland or Northern England, so, you know.
Wow.
So if I go flying now, I'd be allowed to go and fly in a small two-seater doing 90 knots above 2,000 feet.
Not so exciting.
Not as exciting, no.
Thank you, Rory. Oh, I would love to be in a jet. You know, if somebody said to me, would you like to go to the moon or fly the jet, I would choose the jet.
Okay, fair enough.
I just think it's the adrenaline, the speed, and
Yeah, it's good.
yeah, it's takes you up, and then when you come down, you probably take some time to come down as well.
It does, but that's one of the things that's really weird for me. I'd go flying 2 or 3 times a day and come back and I'm just like, just normal again. Because it's my day job.
It's your day job.
So I do enjoy it, it's great, but you know, it becomes, you know, the number of times I told people, so what did you do there? I flew to Germany and back. What? I did 3 trips today flying low level. What?
So how long does it take would it have taken you to fly to Germany for that?
Well, just an hour and a half, something like that.
Hour and a half, yeah.
But we were flying with the Air Force over there, did a sortie, had lunch, then did another sortie, flew back. So.
Well, a dream husband, a dream boyfriend probably would have taken wife to Paris or something in the jet.
Yeah, it's not quite that.
She probably asked you, I guess.
Well, okay, you know, the comfort in a military aircraft is not quite the same. So.
No heels. Okay, thank you so much, Rory. We have final message. I could be talking to you about this impressive career, and I know loads of people would be listening to you for a while, sharing your wonderful experiences. I'm going to read the third message, and I'm going to slowly start cooking and preparing. But the third message is, seek to understand before being understood. Tell me more about it.
I think it's one of the things that I've learned over the many years as we get older. You know, I'm in my 70th decade. I'm in my 62. So, you know, we always sort of think about what we think about our views and our you know, viewpoints on things as being correct. And one of the things as we've learned as we get older and older, the more you talk and the more you engage in discourse with people, the more you actually learn there's more outside in the world and differing views.
Yeah. And
one of the things, partly during my early career in the Air Force and in rugby, but seeing more of this in business as I got in the consultancy world in the last 25 years, the number of times that people will go into a situation, whether it's one-to-one or team-to-team or whatever it is, one-to-many, with this is what I understand it to be, this is what I'm going to say it's going to be to you. When I come across so many examples of, if you actually found out what the situation was from their perspective, you'd do something completely different. The best example I can give you was this. I was doing a training program with a company, a big, huge company, and one of the area managers, we did some training and we talked about various things and we were talking about motivating factors and why people think in certain ways, why they communicate in certain ways, etc. And then we got again another 4 or 6 weeks later on, and we were chatting. We started the course with, so how's the last 4 or 6 weeks gone? Have you used any of it? Get examples? And this guy said, yeah. He said I went to a meeting with one of my managers, basically to go and sack him. And because his numbers were poor, his performance, and it was just been terrible, no contact, and it was just, you know, we were going to sack him. And I sat from the car, and I got halfway there, and I thought, where's my briefcase? He left his briefcase at home. So he drove there. Thought, well, I'm going to sack him anyway, so I don't need a laptop. And so he went in and walked in and sat down with the guy in the building. And of course, you know, normally he would get his laptop, open his laptop, and then look at his numbers and his brief, and then do the talk. And of course, he didn't have it. So they sat down. He was like, and he said, literally sat down. He was like, so how are things, Jeff? And that was his first opening line. He said, how are things? Well, it took another hour and a half before he finished talking after that first question.
Wow.
Where this guy just suddenly offloaded all the issues that he was facing, all the challenges, the things that were going wrong, and how the business had not been there to help him at all. And literally within, it didn't take very long, but as he was listening to this more and more, and at one point they were out in the car park, and he was in tears, and he was very disappointed in himself and that sort of stuff. But he'd been given his job, put in charge, but nobody gave him any support, no support whatsoever, which I left to expect to go in at, and that's why the numbers are where they are now. And the guy said, I realised very early on that no way he could possibly sack him. It was not his fault; it was our fault. And so after they sort of start from now. What do we need to do to make this happen? And he said, I sort of put things into motion within days of that meeting, and he said within a week things were starting to make a change. And he was the one who sort of didn't use the words I used there, but he was the one who said, I went in there with a certain mindset because this is the information I had, I was going to do this. But actually, once I asked him an open question and he offloaded, I actually understood the situation fully.
Yeah.
And so therefore, I made a different decision. And to me, that's so powerful.
It's a great example.
And the problem is, if we always go into something with our own viewpoint as being correct, and even worse, you're wrong, then we will always go into a discussion or a debate with no room for manoeuvre. And so,
Yeah, I sometimes refer to, there's always another side to the story, right? Or let's first listen and then talk.
Yeah.
And I'm myself guilty of that. I love talking.
We all are, yeah.
And I cut people off sometimes. And I was like, because I did the coaching qualification as well a couple of years ago now. And I realized in coaching, you don't say anything. And sometimes it's so hard because you really can see what's going on, or from your experience, you really want to say something to comfort them, to say it's okay. You're not allowed to say any of these. And so I've learned to do more listening, and I've realized that if I just interrupted, this person wouldn't have told me that, because we would have totally changed the direction of the conversation. And also the person probably wouldn't have been feeling like they have that space to talk and talk. And so it's so powerful. And I also do networking workshops to graduates. And many times I say, when you go into networking, I always say, do 70% at least listening, and then 30% you can talk. Because from that listening, you're gaining invaluable information. Because people go into networking, especially young people who are just starting their careers, saying, well, what do I have to bring? I've got nothing to bring. So I don't know, why would I go to this networking situation? Well, you're going to learn there. You're going to learn that, forget about bringing something. And then people say, well, I don't know what to then follow up, what to ask them. Well, because you haven't listened to them, because they may talk about their hobbies, some sort of passions, or let's say they may be talking about their career and their difficulties. Listening will allow you to actually follow up on any of those. And it's extremely powerful. In the networking, I tend to just be quiet, and if anyone really wants to know about me, that's probably towards later the conversation, or we share something similarities of stuff. So understanding and listening is extremely powerful, and it equips you with that knowledge that you otherwise wouldn't have had.
Yeah, I think the other phrase, which is nice, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth.
Ah, yes. Well, I didn't know that in that way. That's pretty good as well. I could say that to my son, actually. Because obviously he loves talking.
Oh, at that age they will do, yeah. So.
And in your rugby career, you obviously had coaches, people who coach you internally and perhaps externally. Where do you now get all this? I gather it's from rugby and flying, but your wisdom and your experiences now that are shaping your consultancy. What are the biggest things you consult on, and what do you draw from? Where is your source of inspiration of particular points in your career? It might be a big question, but if something springs to your mind.
Well, from my perspective, obviously, people sometimes ask you, how do you know what you know? And of course, when I first started, I didn't. But what I did know from my rugby and my rugby days was the whole context of performance and individuals achieving performance and teams, and how do teams work and how do teams work with other teams. So, that started me on the sort of that world. And of course, the real challenge is how do you then morph that into something that's relevant to businesses. Because some people go, well, you talk about sports, but in businesses we don't have top level high performance people all the time. Sometimes we have to make do with what we've got, which is all fine. So it took me a while to get that through my head, but of course I've spent 25 years as a consultant, as a trainer, as a facilitator in businesses of all shapes and size, and that's 25 years of experience. And what's interesting is when you go in as a facilitator or a trainer or as a consultant, and you develop a good relationship, guess what? They're very honest, and they will be open about all the challenges they faces and all the things they're trying to do and failing and all that sort of stuff. So you just become a sponge, and you suck up all this information. And so I've, where I sit now, I've got my experience from my rugby days, I've got my experience from my flying days, and I've got 25 years of experience of my working in and with businesses.
Oh, so you've already been doing that as well. Okay.
So that's where I am now. And obviously, you mentioned earlier on about speaking and that sort of stuff. I feel very comfortable getting up and speaking. I still get a little bit nervous and I make sure I talk about the right stuff. But compared to what I was like when I first went into the military, and they taught me how to do public speaking. They taught me how to speak in front of your peers and how to prepare presentations. And it's a skill that's lacking miserably now with the quality of presentations I see in businesses. But that's where it comes. But of course, I'm 62. I look around the room sometimes. I go to all this stuff, and I end up thinking I'm the oldest one in the room now. Whereas when I first started, I'd be one of the younger ones. But I have all experience, and just reflecting on what you were talking about before, I thought that the way your question was going, it's sort of like in my head. There's sort of two sides. There's a technical appreciation of what you're trying to do. So there's a technical bit of trying to help. And of course, when I first started, it's like, what do you know about business? I was like, not a lot. But I knew more about people and teams and dynamics. Whereas now, after 25 years, I've run 2 small businesses. I've been in hundreds and hundreds of different other businesses and seeing how they operate, what they do and what works and what doesn't work. So that technical bit is, anybody says anything, invariably I've got an example or a scenario or a possible suggestion, or at least some thinking as to the questions to ask to try and help that person from a technical perspective. And the other bit is that emotional intelligence of, sometimes people want to be told, sometimes they want to be asked, sometimes they want to be shown, sometimes they want to be drawn out of them. So each of us, and that's part of the trick, as we know, for people who are trying to be coaches or mentors or whatever. With some people, you can be very direct about questions. Some people you don't. You want to be softer about them.
Yeah.
Each of us like that information coming to us and how we learn things very differently, because we all communicate differently and we like taking information differently. So part of the role of that person trying to help the other one or other team, the team, is understanding how best to do that. And of course, we tend to prioritize to the way that we feel comfortable and what we like doing.
Yeah.
And then it's the skill and the trick is fine, but just tweak it here and there to adapt and compromise with the person or team that you're dealing with.
Yeah.
To get the best out of it.
Yeah, and seek to understand first.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So, Rory.
Food.
I've got this. It's not a fly
spray. Yeah.
But it's going to make huge sound because wok is smoking now. That's the idea. It has to be smoking before I put this beef in. And if this is goodbye to my shirt, it's goodbye to your shirt. Might be as well. It's going to go everywhere. But it's going to go. But it's only for a couple of minutes. And the idea is to
that looks yummy.
Crisp up the beef on the outside so that the meat inside remains a bit pink.
Yeah.
And the idea also, when I did this marinade yesterday, you put bicarbonate soda. I don't know if it makes so overnight the bicarbonate soda makes to soften the beef as well. So when you flash fry this, it doesn't just get the beef into shock, but actually it remains soft because of bicarbonate soda. This is a little trick that I learned some time ago. And if there's, let's say in stews, people do as well, pre-marinate and then bicarbonate soda, put it, and it just becomes softer if you want a quick stew instead of like 4 hours cooking. So it's a great.
Every day's a school day, as my wife
exactly.
As my wife keeps telling me. So yeah.
And what would be your favorite cuisine? You have one?
Favourite? No, I'm fairly agnostic about it. You know,
Okay.
I love, I mean, what you're cooking there, just looking at the rich, sticky sort of juices on there, that is my, you know, you've hit the nail on the head there.
Ooh,
as far as I'm concerned.
Thank God.
But, you know,
I was really worried.
British fare, I love roasts, I love fish and chips. You know, obviously I enjoy curry. I enjoy Chinese, grew up in Malaysia for obvious reasons. And, you know, all different cuisines, I don't mind, you know. I wouldn't necessarily say I'm the biggest experimenter. You know, it's an interesting thing. So I like your opinion on this. So I love curry. But of course, when I grew up in Malaysia, I was telling you earlier on, you know, we used to have a family, we used to do, instead of roasts in Malaysia with all my mum's side of the family and all, you know, because obviously 6 of us in the Underwood family, we'd go and we'd have a curry. So we'd have a curry on a Sunday. So instead of a roast, we'd go for a curry at Bilal's in KL, in Kuala Lumpur. And literally all I can remember was lots of us around the table, but the table was just full of all types of different dishes. And you just picked.
Amazing.
And of course, then you come to you know, the UK and you go for a curry, you get chicken tikka masala, butter chicken, danzak, whatever. So you tend to get just the meat dish and some rice or, you know, naan breads or whatever. So it's like that. And I must admit, it's one of the things that stops me from experimenting too much. Is that I go, yeah, I could eat it, and it's not going to be disastrous, but if you don't quite like it. Whereas, quite nice if there was I know there's some of the Indian cuisines where they do that metal tray, and they've got small little pots.
I really like that.
Yeah, so you get 2 or 3
little things.
So there's that sort of, can't you do this is appeal out to any Indian houses or whatever, and your thoughts, you know, it'd be nice to pick 2 or 3 where you can pick your favourite and then have a go at another 2, but then you can try it. But it won't destroy the meal too much as it would do if you just went with one.
I agree.
So there's something around that, you know, being able to experiment. I took my girls, 2 daughters, went back to Malaysia. One of my brothers got married out in the Philippines, so we went out, and it was a 2-week trip. I said, right, we'll take you to see where I grew up, go see my family, all my uncles, and I've got hundreds of cousins, so it's going to be a nightmare. So they were 14 and 12, and I said, you know, we're gonna introduce you to all this fresh new food and stuff like this you've never tried before. And I said, look, you know, don't turn your nose up at it, you know, because they grew up on English cuisine and stuff. I said, don't turn your nose up at it. You know, we won't give you anything that we think you won't like. Trust us. And if you don't like it, fair enough, but try it. If you say no after you try it, I said, fine, but try it. And so we introduced them to a whole bunch of new stuff, which they did try, and most of it they liked, some of it didn't.
Yeah, but that's the thing. You can able to try, and I think especially raising voices now because the beef is still sizzling. It's majority of the times you do get that one, and if you don't like it, you stick to it, eating it.
Exactly.
And when I go to Indian, I always used to order loads of different dips, even rice flavors, different rice flavors. And when you go with a lot of people, you actually can swap and share. I love that.
I think sometimes the cultural thing is, I know sometimes if people go, oh, I'm going to, you know, order 4 or 5 dishes in the middle, and we just pick and choose. And people going, oh, you want some of my curry? Yeah. You know, there's a bit of sort of, you know, I don't want to share. Yeah. So it's just, you know, if you want to experiment, it is nice to be able to have a pick and choose sort of thing. So you sort of think, is there a chance to have a mixed grill type, or a mixed, what the term be for an Indian curry, so a mixed curry? I don't know. Anyway, there's
different varieties of curries. Yeah, I love that too. And I never used to be a fan of curry too much, but I think I was having a bad curry. I found a really nice place now, and I just absolutely love it. I have to maybe once a month treat myself to literally cover this whole island of everything, and then you can eat next day. That's the beauty of it. So Rory, the time is up. The food is ready. I really hope you enjoy this one.
It looks scrummy.
Can you smell the smells?
I can smell. I'm just looking at it. It looks really nice.
And I added your favorite piece in there, which was not originally in the recipe. I tasted this yesterday. Absolutely loved it.
It looks lovely.
It was really delicious.
But look, I mean, from the point of view, you've got a bit of green, bit of red in there, so the colours are lovely.
It's there. That's what I wanted to make sure that you have.
Cracking, give me a feast, that's enough, cracking.
Oh, okay, well, there is a bit more if you do want afterwards. I tend to load big portions for my guests, just because.
Do you like doggy bags? I might take some back home.
Yes, that's it. You can have it. We'll take it to your wives.
Yes, I'll give her a chance to try it. That looks yummy.
A bit.
Just a very slight squeeze, please. That's it. Brilliant.
That's it.
Thank you.
Being too polite. Okay. Shaking Vietnamese beef with sticky rice, shaken together with peas and spring onions, and pan-fried red pepper with a bit of soy sauce.
And that was so simply
Voila.
made. Thank you very much.
It looks simple, but I think it's going to punch
Yeah.
a lot of flavors for you. So please enjoy it yourself. Thank you so much for being here. It has been an absolute honor. Thank you for giving your time here.
Thank you.
I absolutely loved having you, and your messages were incredible. I'm going to quickly read them again. The only mistake you will ever make is one you never learn from. Don't think about the opposition, think about yourself. Be the best you can be and let the opposition worry about you. And seek to understand before being understood. Rory, I'll leave you to enjoy in absolute peace. Hope it's not too spicy. There shouldn't be too much spice. And
It's lovely. Lovely.
thank you. And thank you everyone for watching.
Thank you very much.